Last week, I said if you went with the polls, you could call it because Kono was the forerunner. He was like 46%, and then Kishida was the next guy with 17%. And that was accurate. That was factual. If you went with the polls, you could have called it, and he was the de facto new leader, and that's not what happened. Kishida won. So the guy who was in second place by less than half the predicted votes won the internal election. And he's the new prime minister for the moment. And then at the end of October, I think they're going to have an actual vote for the parties. So he's now the leader of the party, therefore prime minister of Japan. And then they're going to have an election to see if the LDP maintains leadership status, or how much leadership status. And then it was weird. It's weird. Kishida was the most boring option. So what we've learned is that polls don't mean shit, which is fair. I mean, it's good to know. It's good to have that pointed out every now and then. That polls aren't helping you. Polls aren't making things better. And I went into find some stuff about Kishida. I mean, again, he doesn't say anything of interest. He's boring. I got to go through my notes. The one thing he said that was interesting that he wants to do. He says he wants to lower the income gap. And he wants to do this via salary hikes. Because there is no wealth distribution without growth, and no growth without wealth distribution. So it's like a catch-22. If you don't stimulate one, it won't stimulate the other, and one cannot happen without the other. And this is a big problem in Japan, is that the country's grown relatively stagnant for a very long time. Because he's working with the government, he has control over healthcare workers, so nurses, care workers. He's going to give them raises and stuff. And then he's going to hope that inspires the private sector to do the same. Now, something I've learned as a not running a company kind of person, that's not how that works. The government doing something, it won't inspire private sector to do something. The government running a program won't inspire the private sector to run something. So Kishida, when he won and he became prime minister, he gave a speech. And it was weird because in his speech he said, I have a special skill. The special skill of listening to people. I don't know. Again, he's boring. That's not even that bad. It's like now politics is less. I guess this is it. The problem with interesting politics is it's usually really bad for everybody in the country. So when Trump was in charge, it was interesting, but it sucked. But I guess this is good for Japan in a way. I would have preferred a reformer. So again, I would have preferred Kono over Kishida. I would have absolutely preferred the reformer lady whose name I don't remember. This is how bad it is. You forget them as soon as they're not up for the role. Not Takaichi. Takaichi was terrifying. I didn't want her shooting satellites out of the sky. So there's been a report, of course, about what's going to be Kishida's main issues now that he is prime minister of Japan. And what the report said, ensuring a stable imperial succession is going to be a pressing task, to which I responded, who cares? Because, is that a big deal? The imperial family and imperial succession in Japan, is that a big deal? How does that affect Japan? The imperial family in Japan is ceremonial. They do ceremonial stuff. Now, weirdly, Kishida actually, this is one of the few things he took stances on. So the guy, basically, everything comes up and he says, I'm going to wait for public opinion. We're going to do more research. He won't take a stand on anything. But then when it comes to the royal family, he actually comes out and says, bloodlines are important. He is against the bloodline continuing from the maternal side. So traditionally, the bloodline of emperor comes from the paternal side, from the father. So if it happens on the mom's side, They are not, it's not possible for them to be emperor. The problem with this incredibly antiquated way of thinking and the whole imperial system, if I'm being really honest, is that there's not enough people now. So you're not accepting people from half the family, which means you're not accepting half the potential people, and you don't have enough people on the other side of the family. It means you're going to run out of potential emperors. He really clearly, and this actually implies he doesn't want a woman to be emperor either. Bloodlines are significant was a statement by a senior official, not by Kishida himself, because he would never say something that exciting. This almost sounds like they're looking for the one, like a Matrix Neo, King Arthur type character. Oh, look, Dave's got that sunshine just going. Look at that. He's got the light just on his head. He's all relaxed. He's got that one sunbeam hitting him. The air conditioner's on, so it's nice and cool and warm at the same time. Dave's got it going on. So they're looking for like a King Arthur character who's going to pull a katana out of a rice field. I'm trying to, make it all Japanese. And then it will turn Japan into a giant... He's going to be the only one who can actually pilot the ancient Gundam that's buried underneath Mount Fuji. It's not. None of this is... So bloodlines are not significant. The imperial succession doesn't matter. This is not something you should be focused on at all. If the whole imperial family collapsed today, like there was some special disease... Oh, bloodlines are important. There was some special disease that only killed the imperial family. Japan would be fine. Nothing would happen. It would be very upsetting. There would be lots of news. The actual functioning of the company would be fine. It would not matter at all. So his income distribution idea, like he wants to raise wages to lower the income gap, I'm on board with. The imperial family, that whole deal seems like a massive waste of time. So I'm not a big fan of that. It'll be interesting to see where Kishida goes in the future. But again, I bet we actually stopped talking about him because the dude's so boring. UFO Table. So the company that produces the anime, Kimetsu no Yaiba, or Demon Slayer, the company is called UFO Table. If you actually watch a bunch of animes, you'll see it. I watched Star Wars Visions, because I think all Japanese companies are primarily Japanese companies. No, that's not fair. All the names I recognized were Japanese companies because it was like Production IG and stuff, but they make stuff I actually know. I didn't check the others closely enough, so I don't know if they were all Japanese, but they had one in there. I don't remember if it was a good one or not. Star Wars Visions was a good idea. They had the best one at the beginning and at the end, and then all in the middle, it got worse. They had the one, TOBI, about the droid who wants to be a Jedi. I found that offensively cute. Like they were trying to be so cute, it actually got like distracting from the fact that it was a pretty good story. They ruined it with their cuteness. So, the CEO of UFO Table, that has nothing to do with the story. I just thought I should get that out. The CEO of UFO Table has been charged with tax fraud. He excluded portions of revenue in order to prepare for a future decline in business and keep capital for himself. So the first part actually is relatively noble. He's like, look, business, we got Kimetsu no Yaiba right now. Demon Slayer's making us tons of money. That's not going to last. Mugen Train is not going to last forever. That is a very deep Kimetsu no Yaiba joke. Actually not. If you were even the lightest of fan, you would have got that. It's the name of the movie. He's like, look, we got to make sure that in lean times, we have some extra money. So we're going to build that up. So I'm going to do that by not paying taxes. Not a good decision. He could have taken profits and done that. And then the second part makes it where he's now a little bit evil, where he says, and keep some capital for himself. Just tacked on like, one for you, one for me. That's not cool. He kept 138 million yen in taxes and 441 million yen in merchandise sales between 2015 and 2018. So he was forward thinking. Toyota famously has enough money, like in escrow or hidden away or in banks, that they could actually keep the company going for like a decade without making a profit, and everyone would be fine. So I like that kind of thinking. The idea of let's let's prepare for the future when things aren't so great, and then get through the lean times and, get on to our next phase. Like, that's good stuff. That's good leadership. But doing it by not paying your taxes is not a great way to do it. You're always going to get caught. You're always going to get caught. So he said, as he was in court, and he stood up and he said, I did this. I'm sorry. He said he felt that the company would not suffer if he evaded taxes, except that this happened. And of course, everybody suffers. And then he paid all the taxes. So he actually, honestly, nothing happened. Like, he's not going to jail. He's not, I guess he's being sort of financially punished, but very little more than he was already going to be punished in the first place. So that's weird. I have a lot of little stories. 2 men were arrested. Start that sentence again. 2 men were arrested for forgeries. There was an art gallery owner and a print shop owner, and they worked together to make copies of Japanese art and then sell it. And so, of course, they were selling it as if it was real. But it was weird that they sold it at department stores. Because, I don't know, I think if you're selling forged art, you would need to be a little more subtle about it. You don't go, I guess, no, you do it out in the open. This is maybe why I'm not a good criminal. You do it out in the open, you do it brave, you do it strong, and then everyone assumes that what you're doing is real. It's legitimate. So they sold it at department stores. They sold 120 total known forgeries. That's all that is about that story. Forging art is not a story that comes up very often anymore. So it's interesting. I don't know why. I mean, it actually would be easier and easier to forge art. I guess this is where NFTs are actually technically a good thing. It's one of those things that I was not into NFTs when they came out conceptually. Like, why would I want to buy or own a digital version of something? But I guess NFTs are like, you can prove you own something which is actually real, whereas that's where forgeries are problematic. In 2024, at Universal Studios Japan, in Nintendo World, there's so convoluted already. You have to go to USJ, go to Nintendo World, and within Nintendo World, in 2024, they're going to open the Donkey Kong area. Sure. I mean, I think one of the problems I know this is interesting to someone, but it's not interesting to me. I don't like USJ. I don't have a strong feeling about Nintendo. I don't care about Donkey Kong. Do people care about Donkey Kong? That's maybe the question I need to ask more than anything else. That might be the title of the episode. Do people care about Donkey Kong? Like, if I wasn't already going to go to Nintendo World, and I wasn't already going to go to USJ, would I go to USJ to Nintendo World to see Donkey Kong area? Which, because I said it that way, now sounds like dirty. Yeah. Who cares about Donkey Kong? Donkey Kong's dumb. This is vaguely serious. Corona's obviously had a big impact on everything, but of course it's had a significant impact on students. There are 26,000 less students going to university this year because of Corona. This is the lowest number since 1999. It actually, weirdly though, something they're not going to talk about, it's actually been on a steady decline for the last 4 years. So maybe this isn't the number it would have been, so it's gone down every year, but this number is significant. It's just been accelerated because of coronavirus. So the question is, should I give my personal opinion about universities? I've talked about education before in the past and how I don't feel that a university education is really as valuable as people pretend it is. But I think all these people might be finding something better for their lives by not going to university and finding something more direct. I don't know. I think we should go back to apprenticeships and find people, their place in the world that way. And it would be modern apprenticeships. It would be like apprenticeships in computers and programming and in networking and stuff like that. I don't think universities really are providing all the services that people need anymore. And maybe people are realizing that, which is why it's been going down over the last 4 years. But coronavirus has definitely had an impact. 26,000 less students. And then there's also probably the declining birth rate in Japan has meant there just aren't as many young people every year. And that's also going to force the number down. So there's no joke there. There's no happy ending. Japan's got to figure their shit out. Chiba police, they were like, hey, let's be good people and do a PSA, public service announcement, about bicycle safety. But we want to appeal to young people. And the way you appeal to young people right now in Japan is with a VTuber. So you get a company, the company's called Vase, and they have a stable of VTubers. And you go to the agency and you talk to them and you go like, hey, we want to do a bicycle safety campaign. Give me one of your VTubers. They'll like record this little thing. It'd be awesome. They chose Linka Tojo and Bakegoro. And they made 3-minute video about bicycle rules. So I actually don't know many of the bicycle rules. I need this video. Here you go. That proves something right there. I know you're not supposed to do double on a bike. So like one person riding, the other person like sitting on the seat or hanging off the back. That is actually illegal in Japan. You can get arrested for that. Arrested is a bit strong. You get like a little fine or something. So it seems like a good idea. You get something that appeals to the youth. So like getting a 50-year-old man to like ride up in an old bicycle dressed as a cop and go, hey, young ones, don't be bad on your bicycle. That's not effective. They knew that. So they did the right thing. Well, no, they didn't. The Alliance of Feminist Representatives, AFER, which I don't know, when I read that, it was a terrifying name. AFER sounds like they're going to come after you hard. They lodged a complaint. They said Tojo is a sexualized minor. Now this is tough because this is an argument that goes all over the internet. It's one I actually don't want to dip into. And it's because these are fictional characters. They don't have ages, but at the same time, yes, clearly the way they're drawn or created is supposed to represent youth. So both are correct. That's actually the problem maybe, is I understand both sides. This is a representation of a young person. It's not real. So I kind of like don't have a strong stance. I get tough. The police then pull the PSA. They say, oh, we didn't realize she was underage and sexualized, so we're not going to use that anymore. The video remains on Vase's website, though, and the internet gets going. Tojo, the person, so the voice behind the character says she's trying to create a safe space for women, which is interesting because she's not dealing with the issue that the AFER is actually accusing her of, that she's underage and sexualized. We don't know how old the person voicing the character actually is, which I assume is an adult, but I don't actually know that. In fact, I actually assume most of the VTubers are at least in their 20s. So they're adults. And then the characters do look really young, but again, they're digital, so they're not anything. This just goes round and round and round. There's no way around it. The actual reality of there's no solution here. I suppose they could make them look older, but then older and sexualized. There's been a lot of this stuff. There's a really popular character, and she has big boobs. I forget the name. And then last year, 2 years ago, there was a blood drive, and then they used her character for the blood drive, and all these people got upset because a character with big boobs was doing the blood drive, and they're saying that's sexual. And then a whole bunch of ladies came out, and they're like, I have big boobs. How come I don't get represented in like this way? Because the representation in the ad was not sexualized. It was just her with her body the way her body is saying, come give blood. And of course, the fans have sexualized her. Therefore, that character model is sexualized regardless of intent. But the reality is there are women with bodies like that. And they're saying, she's just saying, go give blood. That's not sexualized. You're doing that to her. And then they would complain about the feminists saying that you're actually, focusing on the sexualized aspect. That's not fair to women like me with my body type. I absolutely do not want to take a stand on this. Digital representations are tough because, there's been the classic where it looks like an 8-year-old, but she's 1,000 years old, like canonically. But of course, that seems like a cop-out too. I don't know what's okay. I do feel bad for the cops in Chiba who were just trying to get people to be safe on their bicycles, though. Weirdly, the next two little stories match. They kind of go together because they're both about relationships. So there's a guy who broke into a girl's apartment. They used to date, and he breaks into her apartment and he steals her Switch. And he said he stole it, not because it was like he had a save file on there or it was important to him. He said because she owes him money. That was in June. No. Yes. So that happened in June. But previous to that, he also broke into her place in May and he stole her wallet and keys. So he made maybe a copy of the key and then broke in and stole the Switch. And that was for money, which I don't believe. Because, I mean, a Switch, yes, they're valuable, but it's not really much of a down payment. I think he just wanted the Switch. I think he wanted the Switch probably because she wanted to keep the Switch. If I was going to guess. In completely unrelated news, there was a guy in Aomori, and he was shouting advice to kids about relationships and dating. So these kids were standing there. This guy goes past and he says, if you get into a relationship with someone, do it with someone who doesn't eat cup ramen. And I wondered if the lady who plays the Nintendo or the guy who broke into her apartment eats cup ramen. Because this is a weird piece of advice. It's interesting because why this specific thing? What does cup ramen represent? So I'm assuming when he says, do it with someone who doesn't eat cup ramen, they mean someone who prepares meals. Like someone who's actually going to take the time to make a full meal for you or together. The kids actually who received this advice, they went to the police and reported that this like old dude is shouting because they said he's like 50. They said he's shouting advice at them, which is that illegal? Like he didn't assault them. He actually was like, here's some life advice I've got for you guys. Don't make the mistakes I've made. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he eats cup ramen all the time and he's like, I'm a bad partner. Don't date someone like me. I really would have liked a little more input, explanation, or clarity. I guess because he was riding by on a bicycle and just shouted the advice, you were never going to get more than a couple sentences. But it made me really think, like, what does someone who eats cup ramen represent in a relationship? It is someone, because you could see it as time efficient. I think maybe he wasn't clear. I think he meant don't date someone who would make cup ramen as a meal for you. So I eat a food supplement quite regularly, like 3 times a week, just for lunch. It's powder you put into like milk or a drink or something. You drink it. It's like protein. It's not. It's got everything in it. It's got your carbohydrates. It's got all the stuff you need for a day. It's got all your fiber. I would never prepare that for someone else. So that's something I do for efficiency's sake. It's something I do for my personal lifestyle. It's a healthier food than maybe going to buy junk food. But if I was with someone, I would never say, here, you eat this too. So that is why I'm suspicious that that's what he meant. What he really meant was, if someone doesn't care about you enough to make you a proper meal and just gives you cup ramen, they don't care about you enough to form a long-lasting, solid relationship. Which is good advice in a way, but some people like cup ramen. And if you both like cup ramen and want to eat cup ramen, why would you not date someone who also likes the things you like? So that's two sides of the same thing. I think there's the metaphorical idea of someone who's not willing to put effort into the meal they prepare for you. And then there's the actual, but I like cup ramen. I'd really like some cup ramen every now and then. It would be interesting to find out if the police catch him and arrest him. I don't think he'd be charged with anything. I think they will just be like, hey, please stop shouting at kids. Even if your advice is good. It would be weird to like ride around on your bicycle and just shout good advice to people. Long-term investments, mutual funds. That's where you should put your money when you're young. You're not going to use it. Don't touch it for 20 years. And then like pedal away. 2% APR is not as good as it sounds. Is it cumulative? I forget the word. I did. when interest rates, it's not weird that my banking language is gone. I have absolutely completely lost the thread on that last one. Okay, NTT is a massive company in Japan. They do most of the telephone networks. They control a lot of the internet and stuff like that. They have decided that remote work is going to become standard. This means 320,000 people will be able to stay at home and do their work from home. It means no more job relocation. Now, this is something that foreign people don't understand about Japan. If you work for a company in Japan, there's a contract called seishain, which is basically lifetime employment. That's really still really normal thing in Japan. The expectation is that you will stay at this company forever. That does give them a certain amount of power over your life, as in they will be able to move you around. So the seishain within my company, there are 3 main areas. There's Nagoya, Tokyo, and Osaka. And let's say I work in Nagoya and I'm a seishain. They could say, hey, Peter, next week, we want you to move to Osaka for X amount of years. It might even be forever, but you're going to be from next week, you're going to move there. And I don't really have a say. There's maybe some relocation assistance and stuff like that, but it's not going to be significant. And that's important to know. Some people hate that. They're really happy where they live. They live with their family. They don't want to move. We have a guy I work with right now. His family's in Tokyo. He goes back to Tokyo basically every weekend, which most of the time, once a month the company pays for, but any other time he wants to go, he has to pay for, and that's quite expensive. Which is, if you actually want to be with your family and like them, that sucks. Maybe if you don't like your family, it's great, but a lot of people feel a certain amount of resentment of being forced to move, and sometimes with very little notice. So this is seen as a really good thing. If you get to work from home, it doesn't matter where you work from. Therefore, no more job relocation. I thought this would be interesting because what it could mean is that people who work for NTT could move further out into the countryside, because there's a lot of small towns that are struggling, and they could live there, which would be a lot cheaper for them. They'd make a lot more money overall because, again, they don't have to travel in and they just need good internet. So as long as these little towns start getting good internet, they could actually start attracting big company employees, which would mean more money coming into their town, revitalization, stuff like that. They want to have no more paper. NTT. They want to have no more paper by 2025. So because it's all work from home, it's all digital, there's no real reason to have paper anymore. And that's been a big issue. We've done a couple stories about stamps. Everything in Japan has to be stamped, and it's a physical stamp. So you need a physical piece of paper to do a physical stamp. That's really bad. They're going to have 0 greenhouse impact by 2040, which a report I read is actually too late. But at least they're going in that direction. I do appreciate the efforts. I think this is good. This is kind of like, Corona's bad, but this kind of change is the thing that Japan needs. Unlike Kishida, the new prime minister, who is not going to change anything. He's going to focus on the imperial family. Come on! No one cares about that. I don't think the imperial family cares about the imperial family. NTT is essentially going to have 4 main satellite offices in big cities, so people will maybe have to go there every now and then. Probably they will just remote in when necessary for meetings, but that's it. I think this is a really interesting sort of new shift. NTT being a massive company means that other companies might actually follow suit. This could be a big paradigm shift for Japan as a country, which would be interesting and really nice, and I think a beneficial thing.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. You can also watch on YouTube/Velocipodcast or streaming on twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest. You can find Ninja News Japan on Facebook. Send questions or comments to speakpipe.com/Velocipodcast. Link in the description. Check out all the podcasts in the Velocipodcast family. See McBee, Ninja News Japan, and Daily Affirmations Weekly. The Bloodline, the One. You are the one, the chosen one to lead the country, by entering the ancient chamber under Mount Fuji and becoming one with the 4 Bows technology that only you, the one true one from the One bloodline, can pilot. They looked for you, in the royal houses, but of course, you were a street urchin.